Welcome to the What I Meant to Say podcast. I'm your host, Wendy Jones, founder of Be Better Media and a mom of four, passionate about human connection. Some of these stories contain sensitive content about real life events, and all of the information in this podcast and from anywhere on the Be Better Media website is for informational purposes only. If you find that you need help, which we all do from time to time, please reach out to a licensed professional for help. Brother Luck. Not only is Chef Brother Luck the winner of Beat Bobby Flay and a finalist on Chopped, his core values of faith, family, and food, and belief in sharing his own story to help others made him a dream interview for me. His book, No Luck's Given, sends the message that life is hard, but there is hope. Come listen and find the optimism you need to transform pain into purpose. I'm so excited to have Chef Brother Luck on What I Meant to Say today through a amazing turn of events and mutual friends. I was introduced to your book and your cooking and your incredible story. No Luck's Given. Highly recommend to anybody looking for an amazing resilient story and optimism and hope, and your values of faith, family, and food just resonate so much with me. So welcome to What I Meant to Say, and thank you so much for being here.
No, I'm so honored. What a pleasure, and I'd love getting an opportunity to talk about the story and just all the things that are a part of it. So this is very special.
Yeah, your story is so incredible that I'm excited to just sit back and let you tell it. That's my favorite thing about having this podcast. And there was so much in your book that just resonated with why I started writing, why I started the podcast, this concept of generational learning, and how the challenges that we go through, as hard as they are, as much as we don't want to hurt, we don't want to see other people hurt, but the resilience that comes from them and the hope and the way that we can learn and then share it with others, that's my North Star, this generational healing and how we can teach others through the hard things that we go through. And when I read your book, I was like, man, he just gets it. Your story it's compelling, it's heartbreaking, and there's so much hope. So I'd love to just dive in. And if you could just tell our listeners, kind of a little bit about where you started and how you got into the culinary arts.
Yeah, my story begins in San Francisco, California, raised in the city in the Bay Area. My parents are Cajun and Creole, so you have this amazing connection to Southern food, right? The gumbos, the jambalayas, the dirty rices. That stuff's so special to me. But living in San Francisco, you're also exposed to amazing produce and living on the water and gorgeous seafood and so many different types of cultures. I had a great childhood until 10 years old. My father passed away, and it was sudden. It was in one day. It was really quick. My mother, she did the best she could, but she wasn't set up for success. She didn't have that support. To be a widow, to be young like that, to have to raise two boys with no education, no college degree, no life insurance policies, no family support. She just had to figure it out. And sadly, it wasn't the smoothest ride. I was very fortunate at a young age to find culinary. I got put into culinary arts as a vocational program. I didn't want to become a chef. I didn't have desires or dreams to be on TV or own restaurants. It was more about necessity, right? This was a guaranteed lunch meal. This was food in my stomach. And what happened was something I never would have expected. This was mentors who actually became positive in my life. These were people who didn't want to take advantage of me. These were people who actually wanted to give me a chance. They wanted to see the best out of me. And they told me I was good at cooking. And here we are 25 years later, I'm still cooking, and now I'm sharing that story.
It is incredible. There's so many things to grab onto in that short introduction. I'm sorry for the loss of your father at that young age. It's heartbreaking, and the loss of that male role model. And you talk about that in your book and the difference in the values that he was instilling in you at that young age compared to, as you went through your teenage years, and some of the things that the street was teaching you, and the dichotomy of where you were at different points and how those things were so different. Um, but the idea that culinary, getting into the culinary arts just to put a meal in your belly, to going all the way. I mean, you won Beat Bobby Flay. You were a finalist on Chopped. You now have two amazing restaurants in Colorado Springs, and we never know where our lives are going to lead us. But through
No,
the
it's so special. It's amazing. Like it's surreal sometimes, to not only do that circuit of television and shows like Beat Bobby Flay and Chopped and Top Chef, but also um, to find identity within a community and build businesses and become an entrepreneur and become a leader. There's so much to unravel just in that scenario alone.
Yeah, and how important is it, I mean, for young people to be told and to be shown what they're good at, to be reinforced positively? I mean, the role that that played in your life, you were just hitting on that, but those mentors, who were some of those mentors for you that were the early ones that were telling you that you had a gift?
Yeah, I mean, it started with my chefs. It started with my educators, my teachers in high school at a junior, senior level, right? 16, 17 years old. And they really made me feel good about myself. They made me feel confident. They gave me basic skill sets and said, you have opportunity in front of you. What are you going to do about it? And that was so important, which is why as I travel around the country and I speak to so many different businesses or leadership groups, but especially teens, right? I spent a lot of time in high schools and in colleges talking about you're already good enough, right? Stop chasing the validation of someone else's approval. The only person who can validate you is the person in the mirror. That's who you've got to really start listening to and looking towards. That is so important because as we build confidence in these people and we teach them it's okay to fail because we all fail. Here's my lessons from my failures. I want to hopefully help you avoid some of those challenges.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things to say. I have 4 kids, and one of my favorite things to say to them or young people, their friends, that that are around my table, is always, if I can help you learn something younger than I learned it, I feel like I'm doing my job,
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
so wholeheartedly believe that it's done through stories, that rather than talking at people, that when we relate through our stories, which is what you've done through your book, it's so disarming. It allows people to feel understood and safe because they know that they're not alone. And there was a quote in your book, that there was a quote that just struck me. There were a lot of quotes that struck me, but it said, "There are times I'm so entrenched in the muck and mire that all I see is the mud around me and no path out. But there are other times that I see the path ahead, the one God is making clear." And it reminded me that, our paths are not linear in life. And to help younger people understand that, like, we're not always going to feel good. But what is some of the advice that you would give to help people understand, what to do in that space between despair and hope?
Yeah, the thing that I think is most important is we all have the same 24 hours. And you have to really manage your time and set together these plans, these goals of what you want to accomplish, right? We have large dreams and visions, but they have to start with small wins, small accomplishments, right? Many of those are going to add up to something great. And I think that's a great starting place for someone who's struggling, someone who's in that despair, trying to look towards some light, right? If you're in the mud and you're in the bottom and you just want to see a rainbow, um, you've got to start to just kind of set yourself up for small wins because that's going to build momentum. I really base a lot of my life on small wins, right? Every day I'm searching for those small wins. I'm trying to make impact. I'm trying to add value. And they add up so quick. It's crazy how much it changes, but no one's going to do it but you have to do it. There's no one that's going to come to the rescue and save, and that's a false reality, right? I'm here to inspire, I'm here to give direction, I'm here to give guidance, but you got to do the work. There's no skipping the hard work, there's no skipping the reps. you've got to do the work. And that's just a reality of life.
Yeah, and I think that's such a I completely concur. It's been true in my story through the ups and the downs and everywhere, starting this, having an idea and going, there is no instant success, right? And it's what you're saying. And I think that's so hard for kids these days with the highlight reel of Instagram. I know you talked about that in your book, and you're telling people, stop looking for your 5 minutes of fame and buckle down. I think so much of that has to do with finding something that you're passionate about, because we all know when we're passionate, the time passes quicker, the mundane becomes fun. The things, I mean, that we get to do when we're in something that we're passionate about. How do you talk to the younger generation about ways to find their passion, whether it's athletics or cooking or whatever it might be?
Yeah. I think the biggest part, especially when I'm talking to young adults, is you have to understand that there is a true reality of, I get to have fun when I work. Like, those things can go hand in hand. So what is it that you find enjoyable? I think there's a unique I was talking with my videographer, and he's like, I got into editing and I got into video because it felt like a video game. To control the frames and put it all together and work with these programs and the software. I love video games. I found an outlet that actually created a job. For me, it's cooking, right? There's a never-ending story of food and cooking and travel and journey and culture. I can get lost in a kitchen for 16, 17 hours a day and not even blink because I enjoy it so much. So I think you have to really start to identify, what is it? Even if you're pursuing the athletic scholarship and you want to be that football player, you want to be that basketball player, you want to be that baseball player or that soccer player. Even if you don't make it to that pro level, there's still so many jobs that revolve around those lifestyles, because that's what you're chasing. You're chasing the lifestyle that is fun for you. If you want to travel, you need to find a job that literally allows you to travel every day.
Yeah. Yeah. And that confidence that comes from working in your passion and climbing whatever ladder you're going to climb, it's so grounded in our sense of self-worth and knowing that we're worth the success, like we are worthy of success and that we have to earn it. But I know that when life kind of shakes our foundation, like it did for you, like it's done for me, like it's done for pretty much everybody out there, how do we get back to that grounded space where we know that we're worth it?
I think you have to just kind of simplify, right? When you get in a vehicle and you drive, you have a destination. You don't just get in and start driving, right? You have somewhere you want to end up. And gas is extremely expensive, so you don't want to waste it. You have to think of life that way. Those small wins we talked about. It's the same scenario of, I have to pick a destination and then I got to find directions. How many miles do I have to go? When do I go left? When do I go right? How fast do I need to go? That's going to give you the directions to those goals. And I think that's always a good starting point, is set yourself up for where you want to end up and then start to figure out the directions.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great analogy. And the ability to stay present in what we're doing now and just plan. I always say just do the next right thing.
Hmm.
And because I think a lot of things nowadays, there's so much information out there. There's so many options. And there's a lot of research out there that shows the more choices you have, the less happy you are, right? So being able to simplify and know ourselves and have that gift of self-awareness to know who we are. But again, there's a lot of things working against us, that aren't helping us anchor into ourselves first, take
Yeah.
care of ourselves so that we can have the type of relationships that lead us to the down the path, like how you have created your success. um, Tell me a little bit about your your journey to normalize the mental health conversation, because you do
Yeah.
that so well through your book, and I know you want to do that for other people, and it's just such a huge conversation out there right now.
Yeah, as I've been traveling around talking about the book and doing interviews, I've actually discovered my purpose of why I wrote the book, which was I reached a breaking point in my life in 2018 to where I gave up on myself, right? The voices that were internal became so loud and overbearing, I didn't want to hear them anymore. And after a failed attempt at taking my life, I woke up and had to look myself in the mirror, and that shame was real. So, you fast forward to now, my whole purpose for writing this book was to understand how I got to that point. I had to unpack the past. I had to look at how I was raised, how I was brought up, how my professional career really aided in that mindset, how I got to a breaking point. What happened? And the reflection, the discovery has been so powerful. I've learned that my story's not for me. My story's meant to be shared. I need to share my truth. I need to share my vulnerability with other people to make them feel less alone, to feel less crazy. For the longest time, I felt crazy, and I would never share it because I didn't want to be labeled. I didn't want to be judged. I definitely didn't want to end up, on a 72-hour hold.
Mhm.
So to not share those things but keep them internal, eventually that's going to break. And I held it for many, many years, right? Those walls were so thick, they were so high. I realized how alone I was on the other side of that wall. And, now as I talk about my story and I share my journey, because it is a constant journey, right? Every day has to be a choice. Every day has to be a decision. As I keep moving forward, I'm sharing this message, and I'm hearing people go, "Thank you, me
Yeah.
too," and that's what it's about, right? Because I've discovered that I want joy in life. I don't want happiness. Happiness is external. It comes from outside of the body. Joy happens internally, and to find joy for me is to work and help other people. That's why I find the most joy in my life. So I'm pursuing that, and as I help other people and I kind of work alongside them, i'm just i'm I'm getting a lot more out of life than I was when I was just pursuing myself.
Oh, you are hitting on something so huge there, and I think you highlighted that in your book too with success alone. There are a lot of successful, unhappy people lacking true joy in their life.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
when we have that success, I mean, you talked about Michael Phelps. There are so many examples in the athletic world and in the business world. But when our identity and our success, and we're not using that to help other people, it's fruitless. That it doesn't bear fruit. And I think that's exactly, to go from 2018, it's 2023. I mean, that's a big transition. And you've learned to dig into your story. So over the last 5 years, it's an incredibly brave thing to do. And I've always said since I started my blog when I went through my divorce, basically a lot of shame, a lot of, guilt and going through the hardest time of my life. And the quote that came out of that for me was the greatest thing we can give the next generation is our own self-awareness and the
Yeah.
gift of our own self-awareness. And I see that in your story, and it's incredible. Um, and the normalization of talking about things that are hard is something that I don't think we do, certainly not in the social media realm. And this longer form story, that's why I love the podcast world so much, is we get these stories that help people feel understood. And there's so much in your story that I want to connect to. I know you talked about in your book, going to therapy for the first time, and I can't remember how old you were the first time you went to therapy, but I know the first time I went, I felt like a, a 50 pound, 100 pounds had been lifted off my shoulders. So maybe can you dive in a little bit about, what your thoughts on therapy and being able to talk to professionals about what you're going through?
Yeah, the biggest piece is to hold it on internally. You're not processing, you're not dealing with, you're not finding resolution. It's just kind of shoved down. And ignoring a problem will never make a problem go away. So it's going to fester, right? And those wounds are going to continue to get worse and worse and worse. When I was a teenager and I sat down with a therapist, I didn't want to talk. I wasn't ready, right? I was guarded. I was still in survival mode. Like, I'm protecting me. I'm not letting anyone in because I don't want to be hurt. As an adult, when I made the choice to go see a therapist as, I don't know, I probably was like 34, 35 years old, it just, I was ready. I was so ready to talk. And I was ready to talk with someone who wasn't in my circle. I was ready to talk with someone who was not a part of my world, who didn't judge me, but just looked at this from a non-biased opinion. And it gave me so much clarity. I remember sitting in my truck after these sessions and literally having these one-on-one discussions with myself on my camera just to reflect and process what I just went through, right? That hour I would unpack so much. I definitely wanted to talk through a lot of that. So, that was powerful.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And the other thing, the other thing that's powerful are the relationships that we create in our lives. And the more self-realized we are, the healthier our relationships become. And I know you're married to your high school sweetheart, and that has to have been a road. But what can you say about how your relationships have improved since you've on this journey to self-awareness?
Yeah, I'm more willing to trust, and I'm not just willing to trust certain people. I'm willing to trust repeatedly. And I think that is so important because many of us go through our lives and develop trust issues because someone has hurt us, someone has broken our trust, they've taken something from us, they've damaged us, and we stop trusting other people, right? Those people didn't do anything wrong. The people you're going to meet in your future, the people that are currently in your present, those people haven't done anything wrong, but we shun them out. We give them this wall, this perception of, this is what you get to see. That's it. I'm not giving you that because I'm scared. As I've started to kind of unpack that, I've realized I can trust again. And I know I'm going to be hurt again, but I'm more prepared, right? The fear is always going to exist. It doesn't mean that I have to just run from it, right? I've got to learn to embrace that fear because it's not going anywhere. It's always going to be there. Those butterflies are always going to be there. It's really important to focus on the trust.
Yeah, that's huge. And what are some of the tools you would say people could, when you know that life's not perfect, but just building those tools, or having those tools in your tool chest for when something goes wrong, for when you are trusting and you've been let down again. What do you go to in those moments?
I mean, I go to my circle, right? And I think that's so important is the people within my circle, and my circle's small, it's a period, right? I have a very small circle,
Yeah.
but my circle is so important because that's who I'm relying on, because those people within that circle have earned my trust through and through. And I can be vulnerable with them, which means I can run ideas, I can run thoughts by them. I go to different people within that circle for different things. You have to have that circle. You can't do this alone. An enemy is always going to separate their prey from the pack, right? Because you are more vulnerable and easily defeated when you're alone, right? But if you've got a group with you, man, I'm gonna think twice about attacking you because you know what? That's a solid squad. I don't know if I want to attack that. So I think the circle is the first step to that, right? But you've got to build that circle, and most of the time, it's not your family, right? It doesn't have to be your blood, right? These are people that you're just letting in, and you're starting to build relationships with, and I think that's usually the first step. Is they're going to help you way more than you can help yourself.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying this chat as much as I am. For more great content, courses, and lifestyle, go to bebettermedia.tv. Yeah, absolutely. And then, but how we go about choosing that circle is also so important, right?
Mhm.
How would you what's your advice on choosing your inner circle?
Yeah, it really comes down to, is this someone who wants the best for me? They don't want anything from me. They want the best for me. And that's so important for me, right? I don't want people in my life, in my circle, that are just looking for what they can get from me. That's not a real relationship. So I'm always looking at that. And here's the thing. Sometimes you need to weed the garden, right? The flowers have to grow, and you've got to get the weeds out of there. So don't be afraid to kind of clean it up and remove some of those weeds. It's going to happen, right? And that circle is constantly changing over the years, right? People in my life from 10 years ago, 5 years ago, are not in my life today, and that's okay, right? I wish them the well. I still want the best for them. They just don't belong in my circle right now, and that's okay. I think that's a good piece of direction when you're starting to identify who these people are, and just know sometimes it's not going to be long term. Sometimes it's short term.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it's making me want to go back a little bit to that value system, because I know you had a time in your life where the circle that you were around was not so beneficial. And I think
Hmm.
that happens to a lot of younger people as we go through life. Like, we take a slight wrong turn. We take a massive wrong turn, and we can get around people that are not good for us. And
Yeah, and
yeah,
you got to really define, what are you chasing, right? How do you define success? Where are your goals? Are those people in the circle to help you get there?
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what's so important about getting these stories out there, because I realized, looking back on my life, I was always looking for I'm deep human connection. I am so not a small talker. And that's what, again, why I love these podcasts, because you can go to the heart of a story really quickly. And I look back at the books that I read as a kid. I'd read books about cancer survivors or the Tour de France winners, or that, like, I wanted those resilient stories. I wanted to know what was possible. And I think that when you write books like the one that you wrote, and we can tell these stories on TV, we can tell them in documentaries and movies, that's the kind of content that we want the next generation taking in,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
we need content that helps them understand how strong the human spirit is. Also for our generation. But I just think there's so many things, that the stories that are told so often they're pessimistic, they're down, and not every challenge, every challenge leads to something great if you allow it to.
Yeah.
But it's the way we frame it, it's the way we walk through it, it's the way we share it. And that is, so much, it comes through in your story so much. But when you hit on the values of, faith, family, and food, it really struck me, because as a mom, before I started any of this, I always knew that what I did around my dinner table really mattered.
Hmm.
And didn't, I can't cook like you. I love to cook. My daughter loves to cook. It's something we've shared, together. But when families come together around a table, it really changes things. And I'd love to get your perspective, because I know you do that in your restaurants. I know the quality of your food. I know you're farm to table. My family farms. I was an ag business major. So, I really think about the quality of food and the way that we sit around the dinner table and what can happen there. So, what's your perspective on the things that can be done around the dinner table?
Well, and I think you've literally just hit it, right? The table is a metaphor for life, because that's where faith, family, and food all happen, right? It begins with a prayer. It begins with the family around the table, and it leads to the breaking of bread. And that's why I really wanted to prioritize my life with that type of direction. But the problem is that I screw up that order every day, right? I put work first, I put family first. I don't put God first in so much of my life. And I have to remember that I'm not in control. When I'm most out of control in my life is when I'm trying to control my life. And I've got to learn to give that to God. And my faith has been so profound, especially in the last couple of years, to where this anger I've been able to let go of, this fear I've been able to let go of. Um, I've had so many curveballs thrown my way. I mean, look at the last couple years with the pandemic, right? So many people's businesses didn't make it. I'm very fortunate not to be one of those people, but it was close. And there was some hard moments, and I had to have some serious faith to survive. And that's where I garnered the strength. That's where I gained the perspective, and that's how I found the energy to keep fighting.
Yeah. What does that look like for you when you say, like, and I concur on the control factor, and that is something that we humans struggle with all the time. But what does true faith in those moments look like for you?
It's blind trust, right? I literally joke that I'm sitting in the passenger seat of this ride, and I'm just like, "Oh, where are we going?" Because I
Yeah.
I have no idea. I'm just along for the ride, and I love that I'm living my life right now with that mindset, because my emails are taking me places, my work's taking me places. The fears that I had about all the problems of my life, professional and personal, are being solved. So
Yeah.
I'm having less fear about the future because I'm enjoying today. I'm in the moment, and that is so powerful, which I think is what has kind of helped with my mindset.
It's so powerful, and what you said just gave me the most incredible feeling of peace, because I've been there. I mean, I'm bootstrapping a startup and doing my, the podcast and the media and wanting to tell these stories to give people hope, and it can get overwhelming, and but that is always exactly what you said. Like, I'm in the passenger seat, God's in the driver's seat, and that peace that comes over you, because
Yeah,
the knowledge, like, if you're willing to get up and do the work, the knowledge, the right people, it comes. It's amazing. But you have to be willing, like you said, there's no silver bullet, there's no hack. You got to be willing to get up and enjoy and do the work every day.
yeah.
And yeah.
I sat with my therapist, and he actually said, brother, you have this amazing ability to kind of look outside of yourself and see yourself, and you can describe what's going on with you internally, and it's very powerful. It's a skill set that um I hope you recognize. And even when I picture like myself in that passenger seat, like I'm reclined, I'm laughing, I'm joking. I'm like so at peace with where I'm going. There's no worry about tomorrow, about the next mile. I'm just keeping good people around me. I'm keeping a good circle.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's just incredible. You're a living testament to everything that I just want to spread. And the concept of food being healing, and the way that we take care of our bodies. I do a lot in the health and wellness segment, and know that, like, food can mean a lot of things to people. I mean, can become a habit. Sometimes it's, not eating enough. Sometimes it's overeating, but just using food, like good food, as nourishment and connection. Like, how do you think we can get people to connect to food in the healthiest way possible?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I talk about F's, but like I have two more, which is fitness and finance, because I think those are two pieces on top of the faith, family, and food portion of it. But it is a full circle, right? What you put in your body is um, what's going to fuel you. And when you think about that, I mean, everyone's in January right now. Everyone's trying to get healthy. Well, you can go to the gym all you want, but you still have 20 hours of the day, 22 hours, right? If you work out for an hour a day, 2 hours a day, a lot of that is still kitchen time, right? It's what you're eating, it's what you're putting in your body that's gonna change it. That's the biggest factor. So um, you've got to be conscious of what you do. Even when I talk to people about grocery shopping, everything you need is on the outsides of the aisle. Don't go in the aisles. Like all the meat, all the produce, all the dairy, everything is on the outskirts. So, treat the grocery store like a racetrack, and really start to focus on quality, and you'll find this amazing um, storyline that's happening. I mean, right now we're struggling with eggs, right? Eggs are the story of the country right now, and a lot of it is is, there's bird flu outbreaks, and it's actually hurt so many of these different farms to where they can't produce them because there's so many animals in these farmhouses, and they're being slaughtered, and it spreads. Well, I mean, think about it. If you're working with small farmers who don't have that worry, you've got not only gorgeous eggs, but you're not dealing with that stress right now, because it's not like, the cost of that chicken went up dramatically. It's the loss. It's the business factor of it.
Yeah, yeah, and I do love the farm to table concept so much. My friends who don't cook as much as I do, they'll be like, "How do you get this to taste so good?" I'm like, "You just cook what's fresh."
Yeah,
Right? I mean, and
so
it
simple.
and we get away from that. America is such a big country that, it's more possible now than it has been over over my lifetime, but the closer we can be getting our food from farm to table, the better it tastes, the healthier it is, the less,
Yeah,
it's something I haven't really been able to wrap my head around because we do have an entire country to feed, right? And I don't know the economics of the small farm to table, but I know that that's when I feel best, when I hit a
yeah,
farmer's market, and so whenever I can, just supporting local, fresh, organic, like that's my I feel so much better, and I feel so much better feeding my kids that, and they've learned, it's like it's a journey. They have to learn that this is a reward for their body. Like you're gonna have the chips, you're gonna have the sodas, you're gonna have all that stuff, and I've never been that person to like shut it down, but just show and model what is better, what tastes
yeah.
better, what makes you feel better in the end. So,
Mhm.
tell me a little bit about your restaurants, the concept behind them.
Yeah, I mean, my restaurants are a reflection of me and my stories. Four by Brother Luck is personal for me. I'm Brother Luck the fourth, so to have that IV at the end of my name, my entire childhood and as an adult, it felt right to pay homage to the people who came before me. But it's based on the four corners. It's based on the four seasons. It's based on four people who provide our food: the hunter, the fisherman, the farmer, the gatherer. These are the four people that actually, bring the food to us. And my job is to not screw up what they harvested, what they brought, what they killed. Um, Lucky Dumpling is my love of growing up in the Bay Area in San Francisco, spending time in Asia. It's a connection to my parents. It's a connection to my grandmother. It's an urban hip hop dumpling concept, and it's fun. So I like to tell stories throughout everything. Which I think is what led to writing my first book.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would love to come visit them someday. It's just amazing, this connection, because it resonates with my values so much, and to be chatting with you about these things it's really, really special to me. So I thank you. And so much again of what came through in your book is the reason behind my podcast. And you're already living it, but I'm hoping that you can help me, or you can distill down these two questions that I always ask people that come on my podcast, which is, what's a piece of advice that you would give to your younger self?
The pain that you're feeling will eventually subside, and it will be replaced with something that feels much better.
Yeah, that's it's beautiful. And I'm going to just take an aside to that question and say, when you're in that place, what do you want to say to the person that's in that place right now?
You're not alone. Me too.
Yeah.
And I think as you start to share, you'll realize how many others are just like you. You're not alone. So don't give up, right? Get back with the pack. Don't be isolated to where you become an easier victim, right? And the when someone asked me who was actually we asked my editor, who is the villain in my story, and her response was me. We are our own worst enemies, right? We're telling ourselves lies. We're telling ourselves the end of chapters before we've even read the beginning. We got to get past that.
Gosh, that is so true. That is so true. And I think there's so many stories out there that are wanting, and it's probably innate in all of us too, when we're filled, if we have guilt or shame on our hearts, to want to blame, to want to point the finger at somebody else, to say,
It's
well,
easier.
because this happened to me, then I do this, or I made this choice. What do you think are ways we can get away from that, the blame
Yeah,
game?
I mean, I think the most important piece is the mentors, right? I gave a keynote yesterday, and the Q&A at the end was someone asking me um, about failure of someone they're mentoring. How do you handle that? And I shared a story of someone I've mentored who's a grown man, and the story is not a positive outcome. But when he failed, the first time, the second time, the third time, I still helped him pick his chin up. And I asked him, "What are you going to do about it now?" Right? You have to make that choice, that decision to keep fighting, to keep going, and keeping good mentors around you, keeping good people around you are going to help you pick your head up. They're going to ask you those questions, and they're going to say, "So what do we do now?" Right? I'm not gonna give up on you. What do you do now?
Yeah, eyes forward. Yeah, not looking back. I mean, we can learn from what we went through, but keeping those eyes forward is it's huge. It's huge. Taking the next right step. So, um, well, the follow-up question to the advice on your younger self is, what are you doing with what you've learned to make the world better?
Yeah, I mean, I think through my 30s, it was really about pursuing my career and um, getting the accolades, and it was about me. As I've progressed out of them, it's now about giving that giving that encouragement and that knowledge to somebody else. Right? I don't need the validation. I want the success of you, and I want to help you. So, that's a big focus for me right now is really just helping others, right? Helping them to discover that you are great, right? And you've got to learn to like the person that you see, because that is a one of a kind recipe. There is no That recipe will never ever ever be created again. It's one of a kind, and you've got to realize how special that is. So, for me, that's the focus.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's such an amazing message to give, to everybody and the next generation in particular, because they're coming through a lot of stuff right now. And I always like to reach out to them. But the other thing that comes up for me through what you're saying is, the sense of competition that can be out
Hmm.
there. And you're in the restaurant business. I'm not sure there's probably a more competitive business or difficult industry out there to survive in. What's your take on competing versus, thriving in what you do?
Yeah, I mean, competition is going to give you it's going to give you a better sense of understanding about yourself, because you have to be vulnerable to compete. You have to be willing to lose. You have to be willing to be judged. These are such important characteristics. The second part of that, though, is you've got to get to a point in your life where even though you're competing, it's not what fuels you. It's not what's fulfilling you. Um, there's lessons to be learned in competition, but it's not a lifestyle to live in competition, right? Because I don't measure myself against anyone, right? I measure myself against myself, because that's who matters. I can't be you. I'm not you. I'm me. And I like that. I like that I'm original. So, I'm here to test my skills, but I'm not here to validate myself.
Yeah, that's such an important distinction right there, is just constantly testing your skills to up level versus comparing yourself.
Mhm.
It's
And
so
it's easy
often.
to get lost in. I mean, man, I can't tell you the imposter syndrome I carried while being on Top Chef, right? These are some of the greatest chefs in the country. And I'm picked as one of them, and it's an honor. And it's a constant comparison because we're all chefs.
Yeah.
So you're like, okay, what's your pedigree? Who'd you work for? What kind of restaurant do you have? What's your accolades? What's your skill set? Where have you traveled? Like, it's constant comparison, especially when you live together in a house. Um,
Oh,
but eventually you realize, like, it's not even about that. It's the relationships, it's the friendships. And, I've met some really great people because of those experiences.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I think what you're hitting on there too is just getting away from that sense of identity in I am a chef or I am an athlete or I am a writer or whatever it is that you think is that defining thing
Mhm.
about you. And that journey to self-awareness is where we tap into how that's just one thing about us, right?
Yeah, I've found this amazing realization that I'm not my profession. And I kind of like that because now it's allowing me to diversify my abilities, right? I'm a writer now, I'm a business owner, I'm a mentor, I'm a teacher, I'm a chef, I'm so many things. I'm not locking myself into one box. And it's why I'm not even with television right now. I'm saying no to a lot of different shows because I don't need to compete. I have nothing to prove. I don't want to be a judge because it's such a small sector. Why would I limit myself to only being in the cooking sector? Right? When you walk in a bookstore and you look at all the different sections, the cookbook section is one of the smallest sections in the bookstore. So I want to branch out. I want to do everything, and I think that there's so much power in that self discovery. I mean, this is why I'm talking about the book. This is why I'm doing podcasts. This is why I'm doing keynotes. I love being on stage and talking to audiences because I reach more people that way.
That's beautiful. That is beautiful, and I'm so grateful to have you come on here today and tell your story. It really is just so impactful and just right up my alley of the things that I know are out there. They're the things that cross my path, and the reason I started this was because the media, the stories I'm hearing, the reality of TV is not my reality, and I
Mm-mm.
crossing paths with people like you through some random stars crossing, and it's different than what's being told. And I'm so happy that books like this are out there, and there are empowering stories out there, and I just want to get them out into the world so much more because people need to hear them. People are suffering, people are going through hard times, but they have to know that no matter what they're going through, they're going to come out of it if they
Yeah.
just reach out, talk to the right person, know who you can trust, and just reach out and ask for help. And I think you're empowering people to do that, and it's just incredible. So thank you so much. And
My pleasure.
I want people to be able to know where to find you. So can you tell us where to find you and connect on social media or?
Absolutely. Yeah, you can follow me at Chef Brother Luck across the board, right? From Instagram to TikTok to Facebook, all that good stuff. I'm at Chef Brother Luck, and then you can also check out my website, www.chefbrotherluck.com. Not only do we have all of our crazy stuff on there, from apparel and books and knives, but it also gives you a deeper dive into what the restaurants are and who I am as a person, and the ability to reach out and contact me. So.
All right. Well, thank you for being so accessible and so honest and open about your story. This was just a pleasure. And I hope our paths cross in person someday. I definitely hope to come visit your restaurants. And
Yeah,
I just wish you the best in 2023 and just keep doing what you're doing. It's awesome.
I
Thank you.
appreciate the conversation today.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And we'll keep in touch.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to What I Meant to Say. If you enjoyed this conversation, you know what to do. Subscribe, rate, review. And for more great content, courses, and lifestyle, go to BeBetterMedia.tv.